When my grandmother passed away, I was completely devastated. I was the one who found her, on a Friday evening, dead in her bed. It's been 2 years now, but I remember it like it was yesterday. I had gone to visit her. She lived an hour's bike ride away, and I let myself in, as I did every week. I couldn't go more than a week without seeing my grandma. There she was, peacefully lying in bed, her hands folded. It was no later than 8 p.m. She was probably feeling unwell, went to lie down, and passed away shortly after. My grandfather had passed when I was still a baby. I'm 22 now, so there was an inheritance. The money didn't interest me. I just wanted my sweet, beautiful grandma to live to be 100. And that's why I shrugged when my dad returned from the notary and told us that grandma had left us all a significant sum of money. I don't remember all the details. I was broken. I felt hollow and empty. My grief took over my life. My grandma was my everything, my role model, my rock. Sometimes she even felt like a mother. I became a shadow, a shell. I couldn't summon the energy to keep studying. I was fired from my part-time job. Call it running away. I decided to travel, away from the grief. Why would I mourn in this small town when I could do so in the mountains of Naples? It might heal me. I booked a ticket and left. 2 months became 6. 6 months became a year. I returned in November feeling reborn, a different, new me. I had mourned and left my grief behind in a faraway, strange land. It was the best decision of my life. My grandma hadn't only left money behind. When I stood in the living room with my backpack, I saw it. A huge black piano. "Is that?" I began. "Yes," said my mother, putting her arm around my shoulder. "That's Grandma's." "Wow," I said, and my eyes filled with tears. I ran my hand along the keys and flipped through the music book. I held back my tears and hugged my father. He must have felt my uneven breathing. This way, she's still a little bit with us. My grandma was incredibly musical. She had a wonderful voice, and her fingers glided effortlessly over the keys when she felt like making music. I remember that whenever I was sad, she would play my favorite children's song. I can't remember the name of it, but it always sounded comforting and healing. I can hear it right now, in my head. I decided to take piano lessons, and that's where all the trouble began. My piano teacher was named Adam, a friendly man about 30 years old. He was an incredibly talented music teacher who played in an unsuccessful band. He could have been Grandma's son. He gave me lessons at home. He was very patient with my crooked back and thick fingers and still expressed his confidence. "Practice, practice, practice. Preferably every day. I believe you will truly make progress." He said this after every lesson like a mantra, and although I sometimes found it torturous, I did what he instructed me to do. I practiced every day. It was the first week of January. It was cold and windy, and I was sitting inside behind the piano, struggling with Brother John, when I suddenly froze. While I tried to play the song on the highest notes, there was a low note, all the way to the left of the piano. Someone or something had pressed a C. But there was no one there. I was home alone. I felt cold and stopped playing. Had I imagined it, or was this real? I didn't touch the piano for a few days, until it was Sunday again and Adam was at the door. The playing was terrible and my music teacher was blunt. "What's going on?" I gritted my teeth. "Anna? You look pale. Are you feeling okay?" I barely knew this man, but I decided to confide in him and told him what happened. He looked at me as if I had gone mad. You must have imagined it. This is a high-quality piano and it was recently tuned. You must have imagined it. Maybe that was true. It couldn't be anything else, right? I decided to get back to practicing, but a week later, I was home alone again. The same thing happened. Almost the same thing. One key next to my left hand was pressed down, then another, the one next to it, and a third. I saw with my own eyes how invisible fingers pressed the keys down. I didn't realize I was leaning back, away from what was playing out in front of me, and I fell off the piano stool onto the floor, my head banging on the ground. I must have been unconscious for a moment. When I came to, I heard the door rattle and my father came home. Completely upset, I told him what had happened to me. I cried and he saw my hands were shaking. He helped me and said it would be okay. But it wasn't. 2 days later, my parents were out with friends in the evening and I was home alone in my room. I was listening to some music when I heard, alongside the singing, guitar, and drums from the speakers, another musical instrument. I jumped up. A shiver ran down my spine and my mouth went dry. I opened the door and listened in the hallway. Now I heard it clearly. I hadn't imagined it. The piano downstairs in the living room was not playing a few notes. It was playing a song. A children's song. I became lightheaded and struggled not to faint. I shuffled down the stairs towards the living room. There I saw it. The piano was playing on its own, as if my grandma had sat down and was happily playing a few tunes. My grandma was dead, and yet something, what was it, an entity, was playing on our heirloom. I didn't want to think about it, but was this my grandma? I felt that with each incident. I was starting to seem more and more unbelievable, so I kept quiet. I decided not to tell my parents. That was, in hindsight, very unwise, considering the mess I'm in now. The incidents increased. Every time I was home alone, the piano played. Grandma's children's song was replaced by low, dark notes, until the song was no longer played and only false, dissonant notes echoed through the living room. False, loud, and hungry, as if a deaf child was sitting on the piano stool, having no idea what sound they were making. And always, when my parents came home, it stopped. Immediately. The stress I felt intensified. Because I was sleeping worse and barely eating, I finally told my parents what had been happening over the past few weeks. Or was it months? I don't remember. I begged my parents. The piano had to go as soon as possible. My parents fell silent. They had never noticed anything strange about the piano, but they saw that I was shaking and crying, and knew I wasn't faking or lying. My father nodded and placed an ad. A week later, the piano was sold. That was last month. When the piano was driven out of the living room and disappeared for good, I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. But it slowly, very slowly, crept back. The music didn't disappear. It just moved from the living room to the inside of my head. I hear dissonant notes at random moments pounding against my skull. When I wake up throughout the day, before I fall asleep, sometimes it wakes me up and I feel like I'm drowning in the endless silence of the night, which isn't silent anymore. Maybe. No, I'm sure of it. If this music doesn't go away, I think I'm going to lose my mind. I have to confess something, because I haven't been completely honest. I know why I am cursed, why my grandma can't find peace and is driving me mad with this music. I shouldn't have done it, but it could have gone on for so much longer. She was perfectly healthy and could have lived to be 100. I didn't have that time. I needed that money for my trip. I couldn't wait any longer. When I biked to her house that Friday evening, I hadn't planned on it. But when I saw her lying there in her bed, comfortable with a book and a big smile, happy that I had come to visit, something broke. Without saying a word, I took a pillow and pressed it firmly with both hands over her face. It went surprisingly easily and only took a moment. Then I called 911. Due to the tension, it was easy to cry when the emergency services arrived, but to be honest, I was only thinking about the money that could provide for me for a year, allowing me to do whatever I wanted in any country in the world. Sometimes I put my hands on my ears to block it out, but the music doesn't come from outside. I keep forgetting that. The music is in my head. It will stay there. It won't be long before I lose my mind. But there is something that stops me from ending it. If I kill myself, I know who will be waiting for me.